Alright guys, so here's the review of the San Martin SN0116-G-JS. But it'll probably be more commonly known as the Avocado, for reasons you'll probably see once we get into the review. But if you're not a fan of Avocado, don't worry, there's plenty of other ones available as well, so link will be down in the description as always. So I'll quickly pop the watch to one side, briefly show you the packaging in passing, and then we'll get right down into it. So it's the standard packaging they're using on most of their watches now. Do really like it, really useful. And here is the watch. So you can probably tell now why it's called the Avocado, based on the colouring on that dial. But as I say, if you're not keen on this one, they've got plenty of other options. Some a bit more adventurous like this one, but then others more standard ones like blacks and things like that. But before we get into any more detail on this, let's go over the dimensions. So we've got a diameter of 39.5, thickness of 12.4, lug width of 20, then the all-important lug to lug is coming in at 46.5. Then when it comes to the weight on this supply bracelet, it's coming in at 131 grams with all the links included. Then size for my 7-inch wrist, it's coming at about 127. But if you're not keen on the bracelet, you can also get it on a nylon strap. And obviously that'll be cheaper than the bracelet, but I would recommend getting the bracelet, as you can always pick up the strap separately at a later date. But I don't actually have that here for the review, but I have actually checked out one of the similar kind of style straps in a previous review, and that was this one down here. If you haven't seen that review, I'll leave a link to that up in the top if you want to check it out, as I do talk about the strap in that and show it in a bit of detail. So, seeing as we're talking about it, let's take a closer look at the bracelet and talk about that in a bit more detail now. So, it's a beads of rice bracelet, actual beads of rice, not like some of the previous ones I've checked out, which I referred to as more of like chain link bracelets. This is actual proper beads of rice, and it is really nicely done as well. So, they're all individual pieces, as you can see here, and we've also got screw links as well, so again, really nice. Moving on to the clasp, we've got the San Martin hexagonal logo on there, and then we've got a nice polished chamfered detail on the edge of the clasp. You can see we've got no micro adjust, so we've actually got the on-the-fly adjustable clasp with this one, which is always really good. Do really like these. Sterile case back there, screw down, and then here's the actual clasp. If you've not seen one of these before, really easy to use. So you've got that button that says push there, and obviously you just push that in, and you've got a good amount of adjustment there, so you'll be able to get the perfect fit. Now moving on to the head of the watch, you can see we've got drilled lugs there, which are always good to see. So if you do want to change this bracelet out, you can do it really easily. Got female end links, helping with that compact lug to lug, and then the slight curvature to the lugs as well. Then if we get a zoom in, you can see we've got that sign crown, again with that hexagonal logo, matching the one on the clasp. We've also got the pushers for the chronograph function. And then we've got that coin edge bezel, and you can also see we've got the top hat style crystal. We'll be checking out in a bit if it is sapphire. When it comes to the case finishing, it's mainly brushed just with a polished chamfer detail. All really nicely finished and done, as you'd expect with San Martin. But now let's move on to the bit you're probably more interested in, and that's the dial. So, as I said, this is the Avocado version, hence the colours we've got on this one. So we've got that green and the yellow, and I think it looks really good. Do like the way they've done it. It's quite subtle, despite being a slightly unusual colour. So we've got applied indices and applied logo, again that hexagonal one. I know some people aren't keen on it, but I actually quite like it now. Then we've got the sub-dials at the 3 and the 9. The one at the 9 being the 60-minute chrono, and then the one at the 3 is unfortunately a 24-hour sub-dial, so not the most useful, not my favourite, but because of the movement we've got in this, that's what we've got. So we'll talk about the movement in a bit more detail in a second, but we'll quickly go over the rest of the dial first. So when it comes to the hands, we've got simple high polish on them, fairly thin hands, as well as the markers as well. And then we've got that blue second hand, which I think works well with the green and the yellow. I just think it's an overall really nice colour palette they've chosen with this one. But again, if you're not keen on this one, they've got plenty of other options if you want to check them out. I'm sure you'll be able to find one that you do like if you're not keen on this one. So now, let's get a zoom out, and then we'll talk about this movement in a bit more detail. So some of you might have already figured out what movement we've got in this, but for those who haven't, it's a VK64, so that's a mecha quartz movement. So unscrew the crown, pop it out. We've actually got a ghost date on this one, so we need to pop it out again to the second position, and then we can just change the time. I think it would have been quite nice if they'd actually had the date down at the 6 maybe on this one, seeing as we've got that functionality anyway. Pop it back in, all works well, screw the crown back down, nice smooth action on it, no issues with that. Then when it comes to the chrono function, use this top pusher to start it. And then we've got that almost smooth sweep, kind of mimicking a mechanical watch. And then if we push it again, stop it, and then the bottom one will reset. Again, works perfectly, nicely aligned, so no issues there. With this particular version I've got though, you may notice I've got an ever so slight misalignment on the actual bezel. It's ever so slightly to the left. But I can actually move it slightly, the actual insert. So if I press down on it, I can actually rotate it slightly. So I might try and sort this out. But then again, as I say, it is that slight that when you're wearing it, you don't really notice it. But obviously I had to point it out because you're probably going to see it once we're zoomed in. So it's a ceramic bezel insert. And as I said, we've got that top hat style crystal. So now let's check out if it is actually sapphire or not, using the trusty diamond selector tool. And yep, we have got sapphire crystal, so always good to see. So far it's shaping up pretty well, but you're probably wondering now, what is the Lume like? Is it going to be any good with those really thin indices and thin hands? Or is it going to struggle a bit due to the lack of surface area? So you can see we've got a bit there already, but let's charge it up, give it a proper chance. And there we go. So it's actually coming up as slightly green on camera, but this is actually BGWX1, so that has actually got the ice blue colour. Hopefully once the camera adjusts, this will come up as more blue than green. That being said though, they do actually do C3 on some of the different dial colour options, so depending on which one you go for, you'll get the different lume. Again, if you check the link in the description, I think it goes over all the different ones and which colour you will get with which dial. And based on the pictures in the listing at least, the C3 doesn't seem to be as bright as the BGWX1. So again, that's something to consider when you're picking which style colour you want to go for. In terms of the one I've got here though, really good so far. So no patchiness, consistent across the hands and the indices. So pretty much as you'd expect with San Martin watches. They don't really skimp out when it comes to lume. No matter the style of watch, they always seem to get a decent amount on there. And this one is no exception. It's definitely better than I was expecting for the style of watch. Normally with this kind of style of watch with the thin indices and the thin hands, they don't have that good lume. But as you can see, this one is actually pretty good. Better than I was expecting. Better than I've had on previous similar style watches from other brands. Perhaps it would have been nice if we'd had some lume on those sub-dial hands, but because they're so small you can understand why it hasn't. But now we're in a little bit closer, you can see it's still looking really good. And as I say, no patchiness at all. Really consistent. Despite there being not a lot of surface area to actually have lume on there. Yeah, we've got applied indices, but they are very thin. So, definitely impressive lume for the style of watch. You won't be disappointed if you do pick one of these up. So now, all that's left to do is show you what it's like on wrist, then we'll go over the pros and cons, and then you can decide whether you want to pick one of these up or not. So, here it is on my 7-inch wrist, and I think it looks really good. I'm not normally a fan of Avocado, but with this one, I think I definitely make an exception. Love this beads of rice bracelet, and obviously with the on-the-fly adjustable clasp, you can get the perfect fit too. As you guys know, I do like a crystal that adds a little bit of distortion, just adds a little bit of character I think, so I do like this top hat style one. When it comes to the rest of the watch, the case, and the bracelet, the little polished details you've got with that chamfer, and obviously the beads of rice being polished, I just think it catches the light and just plays with it, and it's a really interesting looking piece. Wears nicely on wrist with the curvature to the lugs as well, and the compact lug to lug and the female end links. You've also got those drilled lugs, so if you do want to swap out the bracelet for a strap, you can do easily. When it comes to issues I have with this, you probably figure them out throughout the review. There's not really many. There's only a couple of little minor ones. The fact that we've got that 24-hour sub-dial, not my favourite, so perhaps they could change the movement for something that doesn't have that and has a more useful function. And again, I personally would like to see that date function being used down at the 6 o'clock. I just think it'd sit there quite nicely. If they had it colour matched with the dial, perhaps that'd be a little bit awkward for them to do with some of the different dial colours they've got though. But again, would have been a nice touch. But that's pretty much it when it comes to the negatives. The only other slight thing that I've got with this particular one I have myself is the bezel is ever so slightly misaligned, as I said. But if I really wanted to, I think I could sort that out pretty easily, but I'm probably not going to. So if you're still interested in picking one of these up, link will be down in the description as always. That is an affiliate link, it does help support the channel, but you don't pay any extra. But that's it for this one guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.